Hello everyone, and welcome once again to Midweek Encouragement. I am Ronald Rice, your host this evening, Senior Pastor of the Pentecostals of Salt Lake. Thank you for joining us tonight. It is an honor and a privilege to be with you like this. Thank you for tuning in. Appreciate it so much. We're on a journey to see Jesus, to get to know Him as He was intended to be seen from the Gospels. So we're going in depth into the Gospels, combining various Gospels on those events where they are the same, and then highlighting those that are different as well. So we're just moving through these things, discovering the culture, the political climate, the social circumstances, the religious aspects, all of these things taken into account to create a context whereby we can see Jesus in a way that reveals Him, I think, sometimes in a deeper and richer way. So thank you for joining on this journey. Make sure you're commenting below and giving us some good positive emojis and doing all those great things that help us get this word out. Share the video if you will. Make this widely known as we continue to move forward. There's lots of videos in the archives. If you would like to go back and look at some of the others on either Facebook or YouTube, we're there. Our Facebook channel is with the Pentecostals of Salt Lake. The YouTube channel, of course, is the same, the Pentecostals of Salt Lake. And of course, church is located at 1755 West North Temple in Salt Lake City. If you'd like to join us sometime, come see us. Thursdays at 7, Sundays at 11. I'd love to have you come and join us sometime. We are beginning a new series today, and I'm excited about it, and you're going to enjoy it. This is particularly important. And what we're looking into beginning today is the only miracle story that is in all four Gospels. You'd have to admit that there is certainly some important reason why all four Gospel writers include this. That fact alone should tell us that this particular event has great significance. For instance, we only find the woman at the well in one Gospel. We only find Jairus and his daughter in a couple of the Gospels. So obviously this must be and must have been a very important event. And by extension, it is a very important event for our faith. So I hope somehow that I can convey that importance to each of you. So please walk on this journey with me. Now, I'm not going to go and read all four accounts just for the sake of time, it would just simply be redundant. And where there's some differences or more information, we'll bring that out. But just know that this is, in the Gospels, this is an epic event. And I've not forgotten that, of course, we are still discovering what the it is and reminding you that you have to get it. We're getting there. Well, let's pick up where we left off last time. And we are going to read in Mark chapter 6, verses 30 and 31. Mark 6, 30 and 31. If you have your Bibles, I want you to go there, and I'm going to read this for you. I don't have my physical Bible in front of me. I have it in my notes, so I'm going to read this, and if you'll just follow along. Mark 6, verses 30 and 31. Then the apostles gathered to Jesus and told him all things, both what they had done and what they had taught. And he said to them, "Come aside by yourselves to a deserted place and rest a while." For there were many coming and going, and they did not even have time to eat. So here's one of the first important things we run into. So just for context. In Matthew 14, we learned of the death of John the Baptist. We saw there where the disciples of John came afterward and took his body and gave him a proper burial. And after that, then they came and told Jesus. So when Jesus hears about it, well, he just needs to get away from everybody. You ever felt like that? Well, if you haven't, you're going to, and maybe you should have. And today, here in Mark 6, we see the return also of the disciples whom Jesus had sent out in twos. It appears that about the time that Jesus learns of the death of John the Baptizer and is wanting to get away, that his disciples begin returning from their little trip. Remember, Jesus had sent the 12 out in twos and then said that he would follow along behind them. So after all of that, and Jesus gets word about John the Baptist being martyred, then he's starting to get ready to head away for some alone time. His disciples begin to return, and they've got these particularly animated reports of all that had happened in their ministry. I guess you would call them adventures. And this is where we are in Mark chapter 6 and verse 30. So, imagine what it must have been like. The 12 show up and begin to describe what had happened to them while they were in the various cities preaching the kingdom. You can imagine that they're just, this is their first time out alone. And they've been following Jesus some 12 to 18 months or so, give or take. And so here they come back and they're telling the stories. This one was healed. And you should have seen what happened here. And then we told them your story about the sheep. Or wow, we were teaching what you told us and the people were amazed and they really listened. And we taught this. We told your story about the tree. And it was one right after the other going on and on about everything that had happened. And they were really wound up and excited. So it was here in all of this that Jesus does something that's very important, I think, for all of us if we intend to work for the sake of the kingdom. If you are or you want to be a disciple, then you are going to serve God, right? Well, then that means you are going to throw your whole self in to the kingdom. Because you can't be half in and half out. That doesn't work. We've discovered that. You have to be all in. When you do the work of the kingdom, you throw your whole self into it. Even if you're just praying for people, you're going to find that you throw your whole self in. Then there's this whole idea of travailing prayer. Now, that's not your normal kind of prayer. It's not your routine prayer. So how about this? Travailing prayer might be what Romans 8 calls groanings which cannot be uttered. That kind of praying literally takes everything out of you. And truthfully, if you love souls, if you care about people, you're going to find yourself praying these kinds of prayers. And some find that kind of praying is their ministry. And that kind of thing just seems to happen several times a week. And I'm not talking about, and I want you to understand clearly, I'm not talking about making noises and repeating single words or short phrases over and over again. I'm not talking about that. I don't know a whole lot about that. I'm talking about this intense kind of prayer where the prayer time takes hold of you and and you find yourself weeping and praying intensely for someone as if it were you who were dangling over the very flames of hell. As Jonathan Edwards might have put it, by the thread of a spider. You're not going to get into that kind of prayer if you feed on a steady diet of just feel-good preaching. You know what I mean? This self-improvement alone. I'm not against self-improvement, but just this constant diet of only self-improvement. Now, clearly, I believe God would want you to be prosperous and healthy. I want you to be prosperous and healthy. However, if your whole view of the Christian life is that God wants to make everything easy for you, then I contend you've missed it. Because that's not what Jesus ever talked about. In fact, if that is the general talk among the people you're around, then I'm going to say you're in the wrong crowd. You might need to rethink that crowd. You never see Jesus advertising that if you just follow him, and if you follow the rest of the disciples, come on, put yourself in first century. You're not hearing Jesus say, hey guys, come on, follow me, and I'll get you a brand new fishing boat. That's not what he does. It's not at all. In fact, their boat comes close to sinking on a few occasions. Jesus never said, hey, if you want a nice place to live, man, come follow me. I'll put you up in the best place. No. Instead, he would say, I don't have a place to put my head tonight. And the only place he found to sleep might have been the bottom of a boat. So, what I'm saying is this: if you are going to put your whole self into the kingdom, then there's real wisdom in verse 31. When Jesus said, come aside by yourselves to a deserted place and rest a while. Jesus says, hey guys, come with me. Let's take a break. When you're in a demanding ministry, you need a getaway. You just do. So what does Jesus do? He took them to the Bible calls it a deserted place. What's a deserted place? Well, a deserted place is just that. There's nobody there. It's deserted. Sometimes it's difficult to find a deserted place. I don't know, grocery store, Walmart, somewhere might, at 4 a.m. might be mostly deserted. There's some stock clerks around maybe, but not the preferred place that you may want to pray. Now, I do pray there from time to time, but it's not my first choice. And it's certainly not entirely deserted. You've got the guys and the ladies working the graveyard shift. I often think about a deserted place, not just in terms of a physical location, because that is one, of course. But sometimes I think about a deserted place as a location on the clock. See, for me, this is me. I'm not advocating this necessarily for everyone, because everybody's different, and your deserted places are going to be different. But for me, I like to get up early and spend a little bit of time reading my Bible, meditating, praying, because there's not much happening early in the morning. It's kind of nice. You get up before the sun comes up, and the house is quiet. Outside it's quiet. My phone is quiet. Sometimes, even if I'm a little later, I'll take a walk through my neighborhood to pray. Most of the time in the morning, my neighborhood is pretty deserted. There's a lot of younger families. Kids are in school. People are away at work. You might see a person here or there, but it's relatively deserted. You need to find a deserted place on a regular basis. Sometimes you just need to get away where there's no cell phone service. Hopefully that sounds fantastic to you. Where there's no internet. In our day and age, you might really be surprised just how liberating it might feel to not carry around that phone all the time and be checking the internet and your email and your voicemail and your text messages or whatever you're checking all day long. It might be rather liberating to get away from all that, knowing you can't do it, and so it wouldn't do any good to do it. At times, you really, if you're like me at all, you kind of have to force yourself, if necessary, to go away, to slow down and recover from the work of the ministry, because what I'm talking about really is about recovery. If you don't go away and recoup when you have exerted yourself, you might find yourself coping with your need to recover in other ways, and not healthy ways. Some people go on a binge eating spree. Maybe the feeling is like you're stressed out and overwhelmed, and so you're justifying maybe some other unhealthy self-indulgence. It's not good. The Lord does not want us indulging our flesh. He wants us to recover. And there is a difference. I don't think I can even overemphasize the need here. This is a serious need, a need in which we often feel like we really shouldn't partake in. Thus the need to force ourselves at times. I can tell you, there are times I have just made plans and done it, even though I didn't feel like it was the right time. I didn't feel like I could get away because of the pressing needs and the demands and the things that had to be done, many of which I'm the only one that can do, at least in my mind. And yet I plan it. My wife and I take off somewhere and spend a few days. Even if there is internet service, sometimes we'll just shut them off. We won't partake of the internet service and just kind of separate from all of it. You need to recover. I need to recover. I could give you a multitude of examples of those who failed to get away and recover, and ultimately failed in the kingdom because there was no recovery. There was no planned recovery. There was no real recovery after that time of intense ministry. And Jesus taught his disciples that they need to get away. And the truth is, you cannot survive being with this maddening throng of people like Jesus and his 12 were all of the time without any recovery. And you simply, you cannot be all business all the time. We have to take the time to recover, even though we seem to be the ones who have the hardest time doing it, okay? And I'll be the first in line to tell you I have the most difficult time unplugging and going away to recover. And in spite of that, I can tell you I need it, you need it. We need to get away from time to time and recover. Please notice, these 12 and Jesus were in need of a getaway from a good thing. They weren't escaping a bad situation. They weren't trying to recover from bad things. This was not a bad situation. It was just very taxing on the body, the mind, and the spirit. And if you want to serve the Lord, you have to learn how to slow down at times and recover from time to time if you want to survive in the long run. And this is a marathon and not a sprint. Having said that, let's keep reading. Mark 6, let's look at verses 32 to 37. So in your Bibles, if you'll turn to Mark 6, 32 through 37. So they departed to a deserted place in the boat by themselves. But the multitudes saw them departing, and many knew him and ran there on foot from all the cities. They arrived before them and came together to him, and Jesus, when he came out, saw a great multitude and was moved with compassion for them, because they were like sheep not having a shepherd. So he began to teach them many things. When the day was now far spent, his disciples came to him and said, "This is a deserted place, and already the hour is late. Send them away that they may go into the surrounding country and villages and buy themselves bread, for they have nothing to eat." But he answered and said to them, "You give them something to eat." And they said to him, "Shall we go and buy 200 denarii, or perhaps denarii, worth of bread and give them something to eat?" Let's unpack this. There's a lot here, and I intentionally read through that first. I want to take the time to work through some of this with the time I have remaining tonight. So Jesus and the 12 got out and away by getting into a boat. Just Jesus and the 12. They got into a boat, and I love being out on the water in a boat. It's quiet. You're kind of away from everybody. They and Jesus had been ministering to these crowds, right? And so Jesus needed to get away. And remember, he had just heard about John the Baptist. He needed to grieve. And the 12 needed some stress debriefing, as we might call it today. And so by reading all four gospel accounts of what happened here, it appears that they were able to get away, at least for a short time, if no other place than being in the boat, moving from one part of the Sea of Galilee to another. They were able to just be on the water. And remember, there was no motorboats here. It was sail or oar, and that's how they got there. It's quiet, very quiet. This time there was no storm. At least as far as was recorded. They were able to kind of be out there on the water alone for a bit, at least while they were on the boat. But, and that's what the Bible says, but the multitude saw them when they left. So the multitude see them heading, they see the direction they're going, and word begins to spread about where they're going. And people from all over that area start to make their way to the relative area where they think he's going to land, on the shoreline where Jesus and the 12 are headed. So it was quite a feat, I might add, for all of these people to get over there on foot. Now, it could be that Jesus and the 12 were deliberately taking their time to cross the water because they needed to recover, and they may have suspected that they'll see a crowd when they get there, because they often did when they landed. They would see a crowd. And that's no disappointment here. When they do land, Jesus saw the multitude, and he is moved with great compassion for this crowd. He's supposed to be on vacation, right? He's supposed to be out and away in a deserted place. But here's the crowd again. Jesus was not upset about this. In fact, he saw them as sheep without a shepherd. Now, this is not the first time we've seen this. In a little bit, we're going to see that Jesus actually caused them to sit down in the green grass. Now, this thing, seeing them as sheep without a shepherd, sitting in the green grass, has a striking resemblance to Psalm 23. Be a great place to work with and teach through that. At any rate, I digress. After seeing the crowd and having compassion on them, then he begins to teach them many things. Let's talk about the geography for a minute. Let's just kind of put this in its correct context. So, this is all taking place in and around the Sea of Galilee, on the northern section of the Sea of Galilee, or in some cases it's called the Sea of Tiberias. I guess it's got several names. If you take a helicopter view of the Sea of Galilee, the Jordan River runs out of the south end of the sea. On the north end, there is an inlet that feeds the water into the sea up on the north side there. On the southwest side of the sea is that area that we identified earlier as the other side, the area where Jesus and the 12 had recently been ministering, is over on the kind of the west by northwest area of the Sea of Galilee. Where the crowd is now meeting them is on the northeast side of the sea in the area known as Bethsaida. And Luke actually says that they went to a deserted area in Bethsaida. If you look at Bethsaida and that area, kind of zoom in on that northeast portion of the Sea of Galilee, you'll see that there is a mountain range near there, and just below that mountain range is a very large plain. So it would seem that they come off the boat and kind of go up into the mountain a bit, while the crowd is gathering in this large plain. So that hopefully gives you a little bit of context. Verse 35 tells us that it was a deserted place and it was getting late in the day. Now, again, information to kind of put this in context. Bethsaida probably had only 2,000 to 3,000 people in population. And we're about to find out that there are over 5,000 men gathered and listening to Jesus. 5,000 men translates to roughly 20,000 people or so. So this is a very large crowd that has followed them. And to send this size crowd into town, a town of 2,000 or 3,000, would be disastrous. There's no way a town of that size could handle the feeding, the housing of a crowd of that magnitude. Now, verse 31 indicated that there were many people coming and going. So again, context, it's Passover season. So there's a lot of traffic. Not in cars, obviously, but there's foot traffic and animal traffic, at least over on the west side for the most part, because people from the north side are traveling, heading toward Jerusalem for the Passover celebrations. Lots of people traveling through, hungry people, people stopping to eat, tired people looking for a place to sleep. Add to that the fact that there was already a bit of a strain on the region when it comes to food of any kind. This was not harvest season, so there was a limited amount of food based on last year's harvest. Can you imagine what kind of chaos might have ensued if a crowd of this size were to all at once go into the town and the surrounding areas to eat and sleep? It would have been crazy. I think I'm going to have to leave you with that thought at the moment and pick this up from that point forward. We're giving you context, and we're going to move into what verse 36 talks about, how the disciples wanted to send them away and the things that happened afterwards. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. It is a pleasure and honor to be with you. And I am so thrilled that you have joined us tonight. I encourage you to share this video, to make comments, put some good positive emojis below. And I invite you, of course, to join us again next week, same time, same place, for Midweek Encouragement. In the meanwhile, I'm asking you to love God first and foremost. Love your neighbor as yourself. Fast, pray, give generously. And now you go and make a disciple.